We now come to the final session, which, as Nick had said, is hopefully the most exciting session of the meeting, which has to be because given Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, this is like a graveyard shift. So, so I think this is the very first time that I've been privileged to chair a session with only members of parliament speakers and with other two members of parliament in the audience. So I feel like the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and the Vice President of India rolled into one. We are very privileged to have this session. We have 2 hours, roughly speaking, and what would be great is for the speakers to take exactly 20 minutes. Now, since you don't listen to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, nor do you listen to the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, the chances of my disciplining you are very low. But I think that will be very interesting if you do limit your prepared remarks to 20 minutes. So that we can have a much more lively discussion. Also, I've suggested to all the 3 members of parliament to keep down the party political broadcast. But they've said they'll only do so if money also keeps it down after the session.
Does it provoke us?
No question, no intervention.
So,
No, but his problem is he's more critical of his own party than about us. Save and except one individual.
So, seriously speaking, the panel is on governance and economic growth in India's states. So, given that as we've gone through some of the presentations yesterday and today, that there's a clear downturn in India's economic growth in the last few years, which a lot of people essentially attribute to declining governance. So I think it'll be very interesting for us to hear from each of the members of parliament on their views on governance, particularly, of course, as it relates to their states. So let me introduce the first member of the panel, Mr. Bhartrihari Mehtab, member of parliament from the Lok Sabha from Orissa. He has represented the city of Cuttack for a period of more than 16 years and currently holds the position of the chief whip in the parliament. I've always wondered why these people called chief whip. They have the image of going around with a whip. From the Biju Janata Dal. He has had 3 decades of journalism, where you're still the chief editor of Prajatantra, which is the immensely popular newspaper in Orissa. He's also the editor of Saptahiki, where he has arguments with himself. Is that right? On the last page, providing different perspectives on current affairs. In addition to this, he's also published 5 books on literature and culture and contemporary topics. He's currently a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, also the Public Accounts Committee, and the Consultative Committee on Environment and Forests, and the National Railway Users Consultative Council. He's also attended the United Nations General Assembly in 1998, 2001, 2003, 2004, 2008, 2010, and he attended the Copenhagen Summit on Climate Change. So we have a very, very experienced politician, professional, literateur, and so on. We're really very honored to have you, sir.
Thank you.
At the outset, I should mention that I have been honored to be invited here to participate in this conference. I never had an idea what this conference would be like. When Nandu Babu asked me that there is a program like this, are you coming? I said I would be delighted. Who would not like to come to San Francisco? That to Silicon Valley. But when later on he's told me I have to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. And for the first time I'm standing here with a PowerPoint presentation. And I don't know how this will go. And I've been told by Rakeshji that I should be confined to 20 minutes. And we have a tendency to speak on and on if we speak extempo. But once we are confined to certain this type of presentation, This is my first time in making a presentation like this, but I would first start with the time constraint. It is governance and economic growth. But first I would ask a question. Why am I selected? Why I was asked to come and give a presentation here? Is it because I represent a local party, as the terminology that is being used here, as we call in our country, it's a regional party? That too, I come from an insignificant state like Odisha, which is never discussed at all in the national level. And what to talk about here in United States. But something has changed within last 10, 12 years. And that change is in governance. And that change has to do with economic growth. But before I go into that aspect, I would say, what is governance? I will be dealing with these points, provided time permits. But I will be skipping, as I was suggested, that certain things which, of course, becomes a part of the presentation. But as a student of literature, I didn't find what governance is. Shakespeare has something else to say. Milton has something else to say. Machiavelli has something else to say. But as far as I understand, the little knowledge about which I have, there is divergence of opinion about the meaning of governance between the conservatives and the liberals, between the socialists and the communists. We are concerned here with that form of governance which serves the citizens by safeguarding territorial integrity of the state and securing individual security, rule of law, and the delivery of services ranging from education, health to livelihood, and food security. We believe an efficient, effective, and democratic government is the best guarantor of social justice as well as an orderly society. The principles of the state, therefore, would be to facilitate, to enable, and to coordinate. Democracy has moved beyond periodic elections towards good governance. Good governance is associated with accountable political leadership, informed policy making, and a civil service imbued with a professional ethos. What is good governance in Indian context? The central challenge before good governance relates to social development. Indian democracy is at the center of governance architecture. It creates opportunities, sustains leadership, and generates hope. Indian democracy is a product of freedom movement which gave primacy to values of pluralism and equal treatment to people of different faiths and ethnic background. The Constitution guarantees, the judiciary upholds it, and the leadership believes in this value system. The poor are poor because of historical inequalities, but also on account of failure of the state to empower them adequately to get their entitlements. And here I would come to what Orissa is. I did not go into the full details of but there has been a structural shift from agriculture-based economy to an industry and service-led economy. The plan outlay and utilization, when we compare it with 1999, 2000 to 2012 and 13, there has been 7-fold increase in the state plan outlays during the period. As per the 5-year plan, the state has substantially increased plan outlay for 12th 5-year plan as against 11th plan of 2007-8 to 2011 and 12 from 43,820 crores to 1,24,373 crores. Achievement of plan outlay is there, but the growth in state economy, 9th plan, as per the advanced estimate of 2012-13, the real growth rate of the state economy during 2012-2013 has been expected to be 9.14% over 2011-12 against 5%, or has it come down today to 4.7% at the all India level. And growth in state economy is, I think this will be a very interesting aspect to look at, relating to agriculture, to industry, and also to service, and how the projected aspect is of 2012 and 13. There has been this year, in 2013-14, the budget of state budget, greater stress has been given on agriculture. State-wise gross state domestic product by industry of origin, and there is a comparison which I think interested people can go through that. But dynamics of composition of Odisha's economy of 2004, 2005 to 2011 and 12, if one goes through this, there is a steady growth in agriculture. There is a steady growth in services. There is a steady growth in industry. And there is a steady downfall in agriculture. Being student of economics in my pre-university days, I could understand that if there is a slow downward trend in agriculture and there is growth in industry and in services, that is a positive sign of the society. And that is reflected between 2004-5 and 2011 and 12. These are the districts. I need not to go through that. I would mention here the state, but the basic question that actually is troubling most of the Odiyas or the people residing in Odisha is, how did a mineral-rich state like Odisha become economically weak? And I have dealt with certain points in that. The state cannot for long serve the demands of the rich and organized sector of the society and ignore the unorganized sector and poor. Market, of course, is an integral part of social order, but the truth is that the principles of market cannot be allowed to govern society and polity. Fortunately, one clearly sees the determination of national and several state governments, including Odisha, to provide safety net at the bottom of economic pyramid. India cannot blindly follow capitalist model of growth that puts excessive reliance on market forces. For such a model would fail to provide stability to Indian polity. And yet, rapid economic growth is essential to meet aspirations of the Indian youth. That is what inclusive growth is all about. But I've come to this question: how did mineral-rich states like Odisha become economically weak? Yesterday we heard Saival Gupta mentioning about the freight equalization policy. I'll be dealing with that here. But despite our mineral reserves, eastern states Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, one may say undivided Bihar, became economically weak after 1960s due to a policy change initiated by T.T. Krishnamachari, who was finance minister during the mid-60s. He introduced a scheme of freight equalization to ensure availability of coal, iron, and cement at the same price throughout the country, neutralizing the natural advantage of mineral-rich states. This led to the deprivation of eastern states, including Odisha. This not only retarded industrialization of the eastern states, but also subsidized the transportation of minerals to other states. Thousands of crores of money Odisha lost just through freight equalization of steel. Leave out coal, leave out other minerals. It was only after a correction to this policy in the early 90s, now things are turning up. Steel factories have been set up in Odisha. Value addition of minerals are taking place within the states. Yet, I would say, these are the metal sector and the chemical and petrochemical sector that is coming up in Paradip, and the ports that have already been developed. Paradip is developing in a great way. Dhamra port is now commissioned, is functioning in a great way. Number of other ports are coming up. The petroleum, chemicals and petrochemical investment region in Paradip is coming up in a big way. Mr. Manishankar Ayor was that time the Minister for Petroleum and energy sector. More than 24 thermal power plants have come up. And the capacity of 32,000 megawatt with an investment of around 30 billion US dollars. Cement factory has also, in a way, number of other companies which has specific parks are being built in and around, throughout the state, in different parts of the state. Tourism, of course, is playing a major role, and shipbuilding and ship repairs has been identified where it has to be taken up in Gopalpur area. And in information, IT sector, I was told today that the Chief Secretary and some number of other secretaries had come here. They had a very fruitful discussion, and they've gone back fully satisfied, I hope so. I'll go and get back to, I've tried to find out. But Odisha is today emerging, is another IT destination. And all other, like Wipro, Infosys, Mindtree, TCS, all of them are doing very well in there. And the best part is, our expectation is that 200,000 software professionals will be engaged in Odisha by 2015. And here, we are also developing Odisha, Bhubaneswar, Cuttack, in and around that area as an education hub. Revansa has become a unitary university. We have KIT University, which is purely a private university. Utkal University is since 1943, that is also in a way. And National Law University has come up, and that is doing very fine. And all this is because of our government's effort. BPL population at the same time is from 1993-94 in 2009 and 10, that's the latest figure which we have. The rural BPL population is coming down. The urban BPL population also is coming down. In comparison to all India figure, we can see that. And this is the Human Development Index that I'm talking about. The literacy rate is also going up. The male literacy rate, of course, is going up. We have to do a lot for female literacy rate. And for that, specifically, we have identified the tribal regions. The tribal girls are being specially motivated to come and reside in hostels and study there, go up to +2 level, and then graduate and go for graduation. In the health sector, similarly, the infant mortality rate is alarming, no doubt, but it is coming down drastically. So also the maternal mortality rate also is coming down. Institutional deliveries is picking up to a great extent. And here I would mention there are certain policy reforms that we have taken. I'm not going into all those details, but I would fail in my duty if I don't mention here. Odisha was the first state to undertake power reforms, and this happened in 1996. Unbundling of generation, transmission, and distribution, and privatization of generation and distribution also happened during that period. Women and child programs and irrigation potentials are being increased. Those blocks which are unirrigated, the target before us today is during this 5-year plan, we have to go up to 35%, making it irrigation, providing irrigation potentials. The rural roads under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana has done wonders. And village electrification, with the support of the central government and state government, has a separate mechanism also to provide electricity. And especially, I would say, the rural water supply. Drinking water in rural area is supplied through various means, including pipe water supply, hand pumps, tubewells, etc. And rural sanitation is picking up to a grade. And there is a development strategy, the core development in the 12th plan. And Odisha aims, there are a number of things. Odisha aims, I would say, to generate employable skills among 1 million youths and others during this 12th year plan. The development strategy is before us, and that is the program which we have taken up. But other issue which I would like to speak here, and I hope Nareshji also will support me, so also Mr. Piyush Mujra. Does fiscal federalism needs a relook? This I have been ventilating a number of times in Parliament. And in India, most broad-based taxes are assigned to the center, while most expenditure functions are assigned to the states. The expenditure to revenue ratio of Indian states is higher than that for most other fiscal federations. The resultant vertical imbalance necessarily has to be resolved through intergovernmental transfers. We heard yesterday the Deputy Chairman of Planning Commission saying Finance Commission and Planning Commission are the two most important institutions determining the levels of these transfers. Finance Commission determines how tax revenue are shared between center and the states. Planning Commission transfers resources for implementing 5-year plan based on a formula similar to the one used by the Finance Commission. Despite more than 6 decades of planning, the backward district list exists, and the demand for special category status is increasing. Backward region grant fund has special plans for Odisha, namely for Kalahandi, Bolangir, and Koraput districts. Social development is one of the major factors in determining fund transfer from the center, both in Finance Commission transfer and Planning Commission transfer. Human development indicators should become the criteria for fund transfer. Though in recent times, the growth performance of Odisha, Bihar, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh has been commendable, but it has not yet translated into human development. Instead of looking at one indicator or a particular state, one should look at broader developmental objectives such as the achievements of Millennium Development Goal and support individual states achieve these. Although Odisha's own tax revenue collection performance in relation to its GSDP has improved, it is dependent on, I would say, it is still dependent on grants and devolutions from the center, which results in lower spending. Over the last few years, Odisha has improved its debt position and its debt GSDP ratio has declined. I may say that it is now time that the central resources transfer to states could be aimed at the achievement of MDGs. Then what lesson have you learned in good governance? This is the last point which I'm making. Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, including Odisha, have started growing much faster than the national average. They have followed divergent paths. Odisha Chief Minister, Mr. Naveen Patnaik, has won 3 successive elections. In 2000, Odisha had the highest fiscal deficit and the debt GDP ratio among all states. Today, it has become a revenue surplus state. This amazingly so have happened in all once backward states. Fast state level growth has generated a revenue bonanza and also helped center to garner more resources, and thereby the state's share also has increased. Odisha always had minerals, but was held back by the license permit Raj and high corruption. Governments were getting elected through patronage networks, and wooing vote banks, not economic development. Mr. Naveen Patnaik transformed this by weeding out corruption and focusing on development. And one instance I would give here. He has sacked more than 20 ministers for corruption and otherwise in the last decade, and quashed revolts from those sacked. Despite many big projects, I'm candid enough to mention here, many big projects like POSCO steel plant, Arsenal Mittal steel plant, Vedanta's smelter, aluminium smelter, being blocked at different level, getting hamstrung by agitation. Odisha has averaged 8% growth for a decade. And what others have said, I need not read out what is this, what McKinsey have said, what World Bank has said, what Morgan Stanley has said. But I think I leave this last piece of my presentation for your consideration. What Time magazine has said very recently. Odisha has received rare accolades. And this accolade is worth remembering, and also, I'll just read out one. While Odisha has shown a growth of 9.1%, Bihar registered a 9.5% growth, in the last decade. Maharashtra and Gujarat have shown a growth rate of 8.5%. The magazine has appreciated the administrative efforts for the four chief ministers of concerned states, including Naveen Patnaik. The quest for development continues. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahatab. That was really a comprehensive review of the Odisha's development. I think when we come to the discussion, you can perhaps tell us a little more of in what ways the last 3 terms of the Chief Minister, in what ways the governance was changed. And also that you named the large projects, really the massive projects that you mentioned, on how the state will transform itself if these projects came on stream, and how this whole industrial growth will then, for the country as a whole, go up, because these are projects which will produce basic materials like aluminium, steel, etc. And so they actually really affect the whole growth, the manufacturing growth of the whole country. And so I think in discussion time, perhaps you can address that issue. And we understand, of course, some of the issues to do with the environment legislation, also the issues related to rehabilitation of people affected by these projects. What is it in governance that we can do to actually accelerate the actual achievement of these projects? Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Piyush Goyal. He is currently a member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha. He's also National Treasurer of the Bharatiya Janata Party. As National Treasurer, perhaps you can tell us how campaign finance reform can take place, which would then reduce corruption in the whole country as a whole. So you can perhaps tell us how corruption takes place.
Allow me a few minutes extra.
In the discussion.
Beyond the scope of this. I'll be happy to.
Because a lot of people allege that the root of the corruption in the country is campaign financing for elections. So as National Treasurer, presumably you know all about that aspect. Mr. Goyal, the member of the Parliament Standing Committee on Finance and also the Consultative Committee on the Ministry of Defense. So again, you know more about corruption than perhaps anyone else. He has had a brilliant academic record as a national rank holder in Chartered Accountant, university topper in law. And now if he can't become a leader, that's a real problem, because he's attended leadership programs at Yale University, Oxford University, Princeton University, and is now doing something at Harvard, Harvard University.
That other place.
Harvard University. So he's got all the leadership training he could possibly get. And if he doesn't become a big leader, we can blame all these universities.
The Americans for it. Thank you very much, Rakeshji. It's actually very much a privilege to be with you on the panel, taking care of us and managing us. Thank you very much, N.K. Babu. You've really done us an honor, all of us, by inviting us here. Certainly me, because I would probably be the junior most amongst the various panelists here. And I'd like to thank the organizers for all the excellent arrangements. I must mention the office was on the job for the last 2 months incessantly, and took care of every minor detail. And obviously the sponsors, because I've done a lot of programs like this. Nothing like this can work without the sponsors. But I'm really delighted to be here to share with you this remarkable turnaround story, this remarkable growth story of Gujarat. And why I'm calling it turnaround, I'll come to it as we go forward. But I'm only going to give you 11 slides. So it's not a very long presentation. It's going to be focused largely on how good governance has resulted in the economic growth of Gujarat, and how the interplay of the two really matter today in the aspirational India that we see today. Of course, the focus of the work in Gujarat is largely centered towards improving the lives of the people of Gujarat, their happiness, their prosperity. And certainly, a lot of it is captured by the data. But as I mentioned in an earlier session, quantitative data can measure things up to a certain extent, if calibrated and seen in the right context. But the impact of Gujarat's policies and programs can really best be seen, heard, or felt when you are in Gujarat. It's the way you get the feeling of being in that state of Gujarat, completely different from the usual gloom and doom situation you see in other parts today of the world, not only in India. But in Gujarat, you can actually see a palpable sense of excitement, a sense of something happening in people's lives, something doing better than it was earlier. And that's where the leadership matters. The leadership started with looking at the system holistically with a positive mindset. We never blame the system in Gujarat. In fact, we see how we can put the system to good use. It's very easy to say democracy doesn't work. I heard it in Harvard, by the way. We had a big argument on democracy versus benevolent dictatorships. But I clearly believe that the system is there. It's a very powerful system. We are proud of democracy, which is supreme in India. We have a very, very strong judicial process, rule of law, a bureaucracy which is capable. And Mr. N.K. Singh is right here to demonstrate that capability to all of you. A bureaucracy which is capable to deliver fantastic results, provided it is led well, it is guided well, it is handled well, it is empowered well, and controlled well. And that's where Gujarat, I think, provides the differentiating story. One important thing throughout you will find is that Gujarat never benchmarks with other states or other people's problems. In Gujarat, we benchmark with the best. And when we talk of agriculture, we'll benchmark with Israel or maybe Brazil. If we talk of good governance, we like to benchmark ourselves with Norway maybe, or some of the better states in the world where you see clean, good governments. When we talk of industrialization, we want to benchmark with the US, technology with Japan. Everything we do in Gujarat, we are looking at benchmarking with the best. And we want to learn from their successes. There's no arrogance about it. There's no arrogance about the performance. We are all the time waiting for constructive criticism to learn from the best and take the story forward. And clearly, it's been recognized by almost so many forums that it would be difficult to fit it in any slide, that it's today India's best administered state. I'll just pick up my water. I need that very frequently. I've given a copy of the handout so that it becomes easy for you to handle it. But there's not much, you can read that later. But largely I want to focus on this mistaken impression, sometimes because we again don't read the data well, that earlier Gujarat was always doing well. And it's now, what's the big deal? It was always a great state, it was always a prosperous state. But the fact is, Gujarat growth, the GDP growth in Gujarat was at about 4% most of the last 10 or 12, 15 years, and obviously before that it was the same. There was industrial development, there was growth in Gujarat. The people of Gujarat are enterprising. They are businessmen, probably in their DNA, they have entrepreneurship, but growth languished at about 4%, 4.5%. Which today, in the last decade, has gone into consistent double digit. And you'll be amazed. I was just now, while I was sitting there Googling, playing around with the net, I was seeing if there's any other parallel to any other state which has consistently beaten the national growth rate. There are a few states like Delhi, I saw them, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Himachal, Goa, Chandigarh. You know, these are all small city states, kind of small stuff. There is no large state which has consistently, and I have data here from 2005-06 onwards, beaten the national growth rate. And that consistency and that sustainability of the development model of Gujarat is what we are extremely confident can take the India story forward. After inheriting this legacy of a crumbling infrastructure, frequent power cuts, you all know what India was like in terms of power. And very expensive power. I remember Gujarat even 10 years ago, power was about 10 cents, 10 US cents per unit, 10 years ago, when the rest of the nation was about 4 or 5 cents. Very primitive agricultural methods and a few pockets of prosperity. We had Surat, we had Ahmedabad, few pockets which were doing well, Rajkot. The difference that we brought in the state is largely reflected in the end result as we have today. Apart from being the fastest growing state, We have an unparalleled infrastructure build out, which I will come to in greater detail later, and 24/7 power. The state boasts, and I'm being a little immodest about it, clearly 24 hours power, everybody gets power without any significant increase in the power tariffs in the last decade. There have been small adjustments for fuel prices. And this is without any natural resources of any sort. It does not have any coal mines, and coal provides 85% of India's power needs. So they source power and still have 24/7 power. In fact, they've just signed a deal to sell 800 megawatt power to other states. And of course, the Gujarat agricultural story is a fantastic one, as we'll see as we go forward. But general concept is it's an inclusive development which takes every section of society in agriculture, in services, in manufacturing, different people from the tribal areas, the fishermen, city dwellers, urban, rural, different minorities, different caste, creed, language, all people are taken in that development process together. So as Mr. Modi rightly says sometimes, that when I bring an industry to the state, I don't tell them that you employ only one set of people and not the other. Or when I make these good highways and these good roads, I don't distinguish who is going to use those roads. My development is inclusive for 60 million Gujaratis in that state. Of course, various rankings have all given the best governed state status to Gujarat over the years. And clearly Gujarat has shown that the perception of national polity has now come to accept that development politics makes for good politics. And I think that's where we see India going forward. Well, the leadership matters. We all know that the main thing behind any success story, whether it's organizational as we do in business or in the nation's destiny, it's vision and leadership that makes all the difference. And clearly we have a leader who has demonstrated vision, demonstrated a big picture view of things, and taken the state forward. His focus, if I may use a management terminology, has been management by exception. He does not get into nitty-gritties and detail. He likes to empower his people, likes to allow them to work independently. And I'll share with you a small insight. It's a personal example. As a party office bearer, obviously a lot of people come to me off and on. Chatham House rules apply, I'm given to understand here. Off and on, a lot of people come to me that they have a problem and they need help. And I always tell them, I would recommend don't go through me to meet him or try and influence him. Just write him a mail, give your problem. And one of three things will happen. Either you'll get a response, either your work will get done, and that's the end of the story, or your work will get done after you have gone and explained your case to an officer to whom you have been directed, or your work will never get done. You may use any influence on earth if it does not merit getting done. And believe me, in the last 5 or 6 years, nobody has ever come back to me. So either their work got sorted out through the regular channel, or it did not deserve to get sorted out, and they didn't ever come back to me. And that's been the kind of leadership is focused on execution. On execution, I'll share a small example. We have the Sabarmati riverfront, which he empowered a young MBA from the US to actually come and completely do it in 2 years without government interference except setting up a budget for his project. And of course, accountability is his credo. He is very strict in terms of making sure that corruption doesn't come to his state. And he's led from the front by example. He clearly shows that if the leadership at the top is clean, the whole state under him will be clean. I have an example of a large industrialist, big industrialist, coming actually from an opposing party family, who personally told me that in the last 5 years, the amount of speed money he spent in that state, and he has large industries there, is only 10,000 Indian rupees, must have been at the lowest level. These are basically the design principles behind Gujarat's governance model. I'm sure you heard them before. He talks of engaging the people more deeply in his public-private partnership model. He talks of the 3 S's, the skill, scale, and speed. And broadly, he's identified 5,000 skills from womb to tomb, from birth to death. He listed out that a person needs 5,000 engagements with different skills from his birth to death. And he's listed them out and he's sorting out what kind of skill development program. He already has very large amount of industrial workers being trained, women being trained in different walks of life. And his focus is to provide everybody a job, to move from entitlement to empowerment. He does not believe in giving any doles. The government of Gujarat believes we want to employ everybody to earn an honest day's living. Don't give them doles, don't give them anything for free. And he relentlessly pursues that. He focuses on tourism, looks at how the diamond industry, different sectors of job-generating industries can be empowered through skill development. Of course, his greatest strength has been the MG2, that's minimum government and maximum governance. Broadly, these are the three principles around which he has centered his government. And in that respect, the Gujarat government stands out for no red tape, only red carpet for the investors. And you might have, some of you may have seen the Vibrant Gujarat story, the kind of MOUs, the kind of implementation of project, the scale at which industry is coming there. It's completely a story where he wants government to get out of the common man's life. He wants intervention to be limited to infrastructure provision and regulating the law, but not getting involved in the day-to-day lives of people. There's 6 case studies since I've just come from Harvard, as Rakesh said, which I'll just broadly touch on a minute each. These are critical areas. I could not cover everything. So for example, I wanted to talk about education, but I focus on the 6 big picture tickets which affect everybody. In education, he broadly believes that skill development will be the quicker way forward, the low-hanging fruit to get people into jobs. And then education will get empowered with people paying for quality education. Obviously, these areas show that Gujarat's model of development is scalable, it's environmentally sustainable, and replicable in other states. Let's look at power sector reforms. Broadly, what did he do? He segregated the industry and agriculture feeders. He metered everybody's power lines. He got the PSUs working more efficiently to bring down the transmission and distribution losses. He went relentlessly after the people who were not paying their bills or who were indulging in power theft. And simultaneously, the Gujarat government focused on alternate energy sources like solar energy, wind energy, all in all, resulting in a 24/7 power for everybody and a profitable PSU, profitable public sector undertaking, handling the power sector. Of course, the national mission was that the whole of the nation should have power by 2012, but at least we started from Gujarat. In agriculture and water, again, he took a very integrated approach. He built up a water grid where he intra-linked the rivers. The Gujarat government focused on getting all the rivers together. Wherever rivers could not meet, they put up some canals. And whenever there was no possibility of a canal, they put up a pipeline. But all in all, the whole state today has a grid where water reaches every nook and corner of the state. Coupled with that, he made sure people got power to pump out the water. He focused on the health of the soil. So improved the soil health by giving everybody soil cards and getting them to use the right fertilizer and right seed. Overall water table has gone up by about, I think, 20 feet in the last few years because of these moves to take water in nook and corner of the country. And every parameter, the Planning Commission shows that the agricultural workers' productivity in Gujarat has grown by 4.51% in the 2003 to 6 period over the 10-year-old period, which is the highest in the country. Second is Kerala at 4.08%. Third is Assam at 1.72%. That's the level of change in agricultural productivity. Of course, Bihar has a very similar story in agricultural productivity, which is very remarkable, and extensive use of technology to make this growth sustainable. The infrastructure build out is pretty well known. You have all heard about the huge story in terms of the huge network of highways, rural roads, power, as I said, the IT infrastructure, urban planning, in every aspect of infrastructure. Today one can feel proud when one visits Gujarat that it's comparable to the best parts of the world. And you know, the Americans often talk about whether America made the highways or the highways made America. I think to some extent, India is seeing that story pan out. Not only the highways, now infrastructure involves many more sectors. But I think with growing focus on infrastructure, we will automatically have an impact on tourism, on industrial development, on agriculture. The entire gamut of development can be expanded very rapidly with a good infrastructure rollout. Tourism has been another area where Gujarat is making rapid strides. And I personally, for one, believe that's the one differentiating factor that India has not yet exploited. I'm one for tourism as a very major big ticket item in the future. But I'll leave that for another day. We don't have time for getting into detail of that. I'm not covering many of the things because I've handed over everybody. If anybody has not got these slides, you can take one copy as you go out. Industry and investments is another thing which the story is very well known. Way back in 2011, $450 billion worth of investments were committed by the private sector. But the difference in Gujarat is it's not only a commitment. Already 46% of the large projects and 76% of small and medium enterprises who signed up with the government to set up industry are under various stages of implementation from the last 10 Vibrant Gujarat Summits. He holds them once every 2 years. This year's focus was on rejuvenating the social sectors rather than industry. He's made a lot of rapid progress in industry. They now come to that state automatically. This year he focused in Vibrant Gujarat on the big picture social sector schemes. And I think that's an area. There's a perception that Gujarat is doing only industrial development and not bothering about human development. Of course, a lot of that story is based on very outdated data. I can rant on it, I can discuss, I can answer any questions anybody has on any subject on Gujarat. But I can confidently tell you, even on the social sector side, it is one of the best states in the country in terms of its growth parameters from where it was to where it has come today. Skill development, harnessing the demographic dividend is basically what the industry and investments focuses. The youth of India, whom we tom-tom about all over the world, are really the strength of India, which we can see reflected in the growth of Gujarat. 2 more slides, Rakesh. Women's empowerment is an area which has been of great focus for him. I mean, most political pundits say he won his 3rd election largely on the support of women and the youth. He's focused on improving the malnutrition story there. In fact, the Comptroller and Auditor General, which is the authority which audits all government and social sector schemes, has reported recently in March of 2013, when they reported on the Integrated Child Development Scheme of the Government of India, that Gujarat is the most rapidly improving state in terms of malnutrition, 32% improvement against a national average of 9% improvement. That's the kind of improvement that Gujarat is showing in malnutrition. Every other sector, whether it's the girl child enrollment, they're at 95 or 98% now. Whether it's giving the ladies protection in terms of security, in terms of justice in time, on representation in the villages. The Gujarat panchayats have 50% compulsory representation for women. And then he has training camps to empower the panchayat workers, men and women, to administer their panchayats well. So he focuses also in upgrading their skills to improve the working of the panchayats. My last slide is on healthcare. Again, an area Dr. Arvind Panagaria from Columbia had mentioned the other day that it's not about a standard one-size-fits-all metrics that you can see social sector statistics of different countries and different states. So, for example, the weight and height all over the world are different. So when you see social sector statistics, you should cover the genetics, the environment, the geographical factors. When you put all of them in context, the Gujarat story in terms of healthcare improvement, in terms of improving the outcomes, has been absolutely fabulous. The maternal mortality rate is down, infant mortality rate is down. Institutional deliveries have gone up to nearly 95% from 47%. Data is all there. You can Google Gujarat and you'll see tons and tons and tons of articles, some not so charitable, but largely very, very excited about the great growth story. I must tell you, some criticism is valid. All criticism is welcome, but extreme criticism, in the case of Gujarat, I think has got outdated and rejected by the people of the state. In summation, I think the third re-election of leaders like Mr. Modi, Mr. Patnaik, the second re-election of leaders like Mr. Nitish Kumar, Mr. Badal, the 4 states that are being discussed here, clearly show that India has come to terms with good governance and good economics. And clearly good economics now makes for good politics. In this era of gloom and doom and a deep loss of investor sentiment and investor confidence in India, I feel privileged that I've got this opportunity to talk about the beacon of hope, along with my other colleagues, of course. Many delegations from all over the world have come to Gujarat, given a lot of accolades, a lot of certificates. But as I said in the beginning of my talk, you got to feel the pulse of Gujarat. You got to feel and hear the story from the people of Gujarat. I'll be delighted if you come to Gujarat. I welcome all of you to come to Gujarat. I welcome SCID to send a delegation to Gujarat for a critical appraisal of our state, and we'll certainly welcome your critical comments and suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Piyush, for that rousing broadcast on Gujarat. Just as I pose a question for discussion to Mr. Mahtab, let me just, one thing that was noticeable in your broadcast was always talking about he did this, as opposed to the government doing it, the people of Gujarat doing it, or the entrepreneurs of Gujarat doing it. He did it. Are you basically heeding the Harvard recommendation of a benevolent dictator? If you can keep that in mind.
I'll be happy to answer that.
What systems has he put in so that even after he goes, Gujarat will not fall down?
Absolutely.
May I now introduce Mr. Naresh Gujral. He is representing, as he said, he is the SAD MP here. That is, he recommends Shiromani Akali Dal, which is abbreviation is SAD. I'm only quoting him. He said, I'm the SAD MP here. He represents Punjab in the Rajya Sabha, and he elected March 2007 and re-elected March 2010 onwards. He is a member of the Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture, the member Committee on Public Undertaking, Committee on Defense, and also the Public Accounts Committee. And he's also industrialist in his own right, Mr. Gujral.
Thank you. Honored to be here. And thank you very much, NK and the organizers. It's a great privilege. Difficult task to follow after Gujarat, but we also have a compelling story. Punjab, as you know, has had the dubious distinction of facing 2 partitions. The first one in 1947 meant giving away 60% of the most fertile land with a well-developed canal system. And the second meant parting with the second one, where we parted with 50% of our land to Himachal and Haryana and our industrial belt of Faridabad and Sonipat adjoining Delhi. After the first partition, the renowned spirit of the Punjabis came to the fore, and the migrants started to lay the story of India's agriculture story. By 1955-56, Punjab had overtaken West Bengal to be the #1 state in terms of per capita income, a position that it retained till 1992-93.
The newly built Bhakra Nangal Dam in 1958 added a new dimension to our agriculture and gave farmer hope for the future. The Green Revolution, which took place in the mid-60s when the farmers of Punjab took to planting new strains of wheat, rescued India from dependence on imported wheat, and Punjab came to be known as the granary of India. Our growth rate of 5.4% at that stage was almost 1.5 times the national growth rate of 3.5%. The state's budget started to show a surplus despite investing substantially in rural development. On the industrial front, after the second partition in 1966, except some small industrial clusters in Ludhiana, Amritsar, and some cottage industry in Jalandhar, there was nothing substantial left in the state. The division of the state along linguistic lines and the denial of Chandigarh to Punjab created dissatisfaction amongst a section of the Sikh population, which led to a rupture in the communal harmony between the Hindus and the Sikhs, a phenomenon never seen before. The resultant violence and killings of both Hindus and Sikhs by the radical militants destroyed the very core of Punjab's healthy economy. The best talent in the industry, like the Munjals and the Mittals, who were to create industrial empires later on, left the state. As the communal situation worsened, especially after the genocide of the 1984, army and paramilitary forces had to be called in and the state came under a long spell of governor's rule. To make matters worse, the government of India saddled Punjab with all the expenses of fighting this proxy war with our neighbor, who had actively stepped in to encourage militancy. This brought Punjab's economy to its knees. The Congress government, which came to power in 1992, crushed the militancy with a heavy hand, and by 1995 the situation came under control. But by then virtually no fresh investments had been made in Punjab in the preceding decade and a half, and the state's revenue generation, which was not enough to even meet the committed payments of salary and pensions, leave aside the interest. We had to take huge loans, and militancy also had affected the healthy agriculture production, as 5 decades or 2 generations after the land reforms, the average land holdings had shrunk to just 3 to 4 acres per family. When the Akali BJP government came to power in 1997, they were faced with many challenges. A, restoring the Hindu-Sikh amity, the vital bloodstream of Punjab's culture and economy. B, investing in rural infrastructure. C, resurrection of industry. And D, providing succor to the Dalits, the poorest of the poor, who constitute 29% of Punjab's population, highest in the country. The Akali Dal had promised in their election manifesto to provide free power to the farm sector, as well as many welfare schemes for the economically weaker sections. This put added pressure on the treasury, and the government could only fulfill its commitments by raising fresh loans. Fortunately for the state, the Janata Dal government at the center in 1997 decided to write off the state's debt of approximately 8,000 crores, which was incurred in maintaining the defense forces during the years of insurgency. However, just as the industrial houses were beginning to regain confidence in the state, the new NDA government at the center decided to grant 100% tax exemptions on income tax and excise to the neighboring states of Jammu and Kashmir, Uttaranchal, and Himachal. As a result, not only did fresh investment dry up overnight, but many of our existing industrial units decided to relocate to the neighboring states. And since relations between India and Pakistan had remained strained and frosty through the 80s and 90s, It affected the confidence of the big industrialists to invest in this sensitive border state. On the political front, the intense rivalry between Congress and the Akalis led to competitive populism, which further put pressure on the state's treasury. As a consequence, year after year, the fiscal deficit ballooned and the state's borrowings galloped. By 2007, when the Akalis came back to power, the state was virtually bankrupt. No fresh initiatives had been taken to meet the ever-increasing demand for electricity. The water table was sinking as heavy-duty submersible pumps were being used by the farmers to irrigate the crops. The healthy canal system, which was once the backbone of our agriculture, had been neglected and was in need of urgent repair and renewal. Tax compliance was dismal, and the parallel economy was flourishing at the cost of the state exchequer. The previous government, in order to contain the fiscal deficit, had completely stopped fresh recruitment. As a result, there were schools without teachers, hospitals without doctors, and police stations with a minuscule police force. There was widespread resentment amongst the people as roads and infrastructure were in a pathetic state, and the youth had lost all hope and taken to drugs in a big way, as all avenues of finding gainful employment had evaporated. Akali Dal's election campaign in 2007 only focused on rebuilding Punjab's economy, and for the first time, Akalis did not talk of any religious agenda. The party had wisely decided to change course. I will present some slides to show how the economy fared from 2002 to 2012 as compared to the earlier period of the Congress regime and the initiatives which our government has taken in the last 6 years. This is also important because an impression has sought to be created that we were fiscally irresponsible and that we were squandering away the state's resources. Not only did the government invest heavily in infrastructure, education and healthcare, but also ensured that the state's revenue grew a healthy 18 to 20% year on year due to stricter compliance through the use of information technology. In 2012, the Akalis were re-elected for the second successive term, a rare feat as no government has earlier been re-elected twice in a row. People voted for the Akalis because progress was visible. The Bathinda refinery project pushed by the government and set up at a cost of $5 billion by the HPCL Mittal Group had started functioning. Construction of new power plants, which we had planned as soon as we came to power in 2007, was a reality. New airports were being built. The road connectivity had vastly improved. Large sums of money were invested in repairing the deteriorating canals, though a lot still needs to be done. Schools now had teachers. Over 60,000 new recruitments were made. 19,000 policemen and women were recruited, and hospitals recruited much needed doctors and staff. In brief, we had rekindled hope in our people. We had made many promises to the electorate in our election manifesto, but the main promise was to put Punjab's economy back on track with a view to creating jobs for our unemployed youth. For this, rapid industrialization and modernizing agriculture was necessary. For the first time, the government decided to constitute a Punjab Development Council consisting of who's who of Indian industry. Boston Consulting Group has been asked to prepare a detailed report on the challenges as well as the way forward. It is common knowledge that India is riddled with corruption, which has spread like cancer to all organs of our society. The helpless citizens run from pillar to post, even to get the smallest work done. In order to provide some relief to the ordinary citizen, we were the first state to enact the Right to Service Act in 2012, which covers 67 services. This has now been taken up by many other states. Officers now have to satisfy the citizens within a specific time frame, and there are monetary penalties in case of delay. Also, all land records in the state have been computerized, and farmers can now access their land records sitting at home. Urban areas too are receiving our full attention. 32 master plans for our cities have already been notified, and 27 are under preparation. All 157 towns and cities will be notified and covered by master plans within the next 5 years to ensure that adequate infrastructural facilities are provided to give a fillip to urbanization program. Our government has drawn up an ambitious plan of $2 billion for providing basic civic amenities to the urban townships. House tax has been introduced from 2013-14. It'll come as a surprise to many of you, but we didn't have house tax. This would not only ensure that municipalities will have enough resources at their command, but will also qualify the state to receive approximately $200 million from the central government under the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission. I will now briefly outline the way forward. In the field of agriculture, it is common knowledge that Punjab feeds the nation. Currently, Punjab contributes 42% wheat and 27% rice to the central pool. 97% of the crop area is under irrigation, so no further growth is possible in agriculture unless there is some new scientific breakthrough, like the BT cotton, which helped the state's cotton farmers achieve higher income. Stagnation in yields due to the soil fatigue compels farmers to use more fertilizer and pesticide. Pesticide usage has gone up from 3,200 kilograms per hectare in 80-81 to 5,800 kilograms in 2011-12, yet yield has stagnated. But this has created a grave problem of a high rate of cancer. In fact, 2 of our districts, Bathinda and Mansa, are now called cancer districts. We need to diversify our crop, grow more cash crops. For this, we have to create a market at the doorstep for the farmer through cooperatives and by encouraging large-scale retailers to step in. Central government also has to initiate a minimum support price scheme for cash crops. Our farmer faces 2 risks, the production risk and the market risk. While the Punjab farmer is willing to take the former, there is reluctance to take this second. So he likes to stay in the wheat-rice cycle. 77% of the cropped area is following the wheat-rice cycle in order to take advantage of the MSP. As a result, our water table has declined. Our canals have only 14.54 million acre feet against a need of 52 MAF. The gap is met through tube wells, 1.4 million tube wells. The water table in 9,000 kilometers of central Punjab is down by 20 meters, and in the last decade, while in the southwest area where Bikaner and Sirhind canals are flowing, we have a problem of waterlogging, and as the canals require urgent repair and renovation. The Punjab government is laying a lot of stress on water conservation, like zero tillage technology, raised bed plantation, and sprinkler irrigation. We are educating the farmer that crop residuals should not be burnt in the fields. This way, a farmer saves diesel worth 3,600 per hectare and also 1,000 cubic meter of water per hectare. Crop under tillage was only 750 hectare in 2001, and in 2011-12 it has increased to 7.5 lakh hectares. The Punjab government has enacted a Punjab Preservation of Subsoil Water Act 2009, whereby no farmer can now sow nursery of paddy before May 1st, and transplantation can be done only after the state notifies the date. Micro irrigation schemes are being implemented in the state along with construction of low-cost dams. Our policy of charging a mandi tax or market tax, which is used only for rural development, has worked very well. As a result, we have perhaps the best rural connectivity in terms of roads and development at the village level. Money, you'd be happy to know that this money is entrusted totally to the panchayats. During the 11th plan, 10,500 industrial units came up in the state with an investment of 3.2 billion during the last 5 years, and 150 mega projects with an investment of $12 billion were sanctioned, wherein an investment of 2.2 billion has already been made. Ajitgarh, adjoining Chandigarh, is fast emerging as IT industry, as a hub for IT industry. And Mohali city, which has been planned by renowned Singapore town planners, is being developed to encourage IT in the state. Within a year, Punjab will have enough power. 3 new power plants will start generating electricity. 3 new power plants will start generating electricity, adding 2,349 megawatts capacity, which will increase by another 1,570 megawatts in the following year. As a consequence, the power subsidy of approximately 6,000 crores should come down. Punjab hopes to attract new industry once it has sufficient power, because everybody is eyeing Punjab's vibrant market. Also, the opening of the Wagah border has helped us a lot, and we are hoping that under Nawaz Sharif, another border at Firozpur will also be opened. Punjab's labor is hardworking, and there is no history of industrial unrest in the state, unlike our neighbor Haryana. We are working on announcing a new industrial policy for the state, and within the next 2 months, Boston Consulting Group, which is advising us on how to cut red tape and make Punjab an attractive destination for new businesses, will come with a plan. We have identified the growth areas or clusters where various industries will be located based on raw material and trained labor availability. Labor-oriented industry would be given preference, and we are actively wooing large industrial houses to set up their factories in Punjab. While we welcome new industry and help existing industry by making our bureaucracy and policies more business-friendly, we are clear that there shall be zero tolerance for tax evasion, and we are committed to grow the state's revenue by a minimum of 18 to 20% per annum. If you give me 3-4 minutes more. Coming to our infrastructure, our roads infrastructure is one of the best in the country, at par with Gujarat. One international airport is already functioning at Amritsar, and the second one at Mohali will be ready within 18 months. The Ludhiana Metro Rail project, at a cost of $1.5 billion, has already been sanctioned, and Amritsar battery-operated POD system is under implementation. Not working. Okay. In the field of education, we are laying a lot of emphasis on HRD, as no state can grow without investing in its youth. Indian School of Business and Indian Institute of Science Education and Research have been established at Knowledge City, Mohali. A new IIT is already functional. Institute of Nanotechnology and National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institutes have also been established. We are setting up a world-class university near Amritsar. Our education department has employed 71,000 new teachers in the last 6 years. 30 other schools have been set up in PPP mode with top business houses to impart free education to bright children in rural areas. We are providing free computer tablets to all class 12 students of the government schools. 1.2 lakh bicycles have been distributed to Dalit girls, and another 1.25 lakhs will be distributed by this year. School uniforms have been free school uniforms have been distributed to 1.7 million children, and 2.3 million children belonging to underprivileged families studying in government schools have been given free books. Healthcare remains a major priority for us, and we are setting up many hospitals in the state. We intend to also set up a medical city near Chandigarh, which will attract the best private sector hospitals so that Punjab becomes a hub for medical tourism. In the field of social welfare, and this is important for us as almost 30% of the population is Dalit, the government is providing subsidized wheat and dal to approximately 1.7 million people. To correct the gender imbalance, we have created a new scheme whereby rupees 25,000 is deposited with Life Insurance Corporation of India when a child is born, and this can be withdrawn at different stages of the child's life. We are a victim of drug abuse. 1 minute more. And that is because Pakistan is pushing a lot of drugs into Punjab, and we are trying to deal with this situation by increasing our police force. While we are making every effort to do everything that we can, as my colleagues mentioned before, the problem is that the central government, they have centrally sponsored schemes and they assume that one size should fit all. That doesn't work for Punjab because we are a progressive state, we have been achieving, so we are not given benefits of what is given from the center. For example, while we feed the nation, when the debt waiver was given, Punjab's farmer got only 1.8% of the total money that was given out to farmers, because our farmers are repaying the banks honestly. But hopefully things will change next year. As you can see, all the NDA partners and to-be NDA partners, all the states are performing very well. So certainly there will be a change of government next year. And when that happens, I think the pattern of distribution of finances with the states will also change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gujral, for displaying the changes that have taken place in Punjab. I think the question for you really is that given all these changes that have taken place, is there enough systemic change in Punjab so that Punjab does come back to its rank as the #1 state in the country, given that you have the traditional advantages of a prosperous state that you've had, but that you have slipped in the last 15-20 years, even if some improvements have taken place in the last 5 years. I've done better than the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, and the other two MPs didn't even rush to the well here in protest at any of the statements here. So maybe I should get elected next time around. Nick, why don't you start?
You just want me to respond to one question?
No,
you said? You asked a question.
No, after, I thought it's
Okay, fair.
better to...
No, I'm happy, but I said since you made some comment on...
No, I'll ask each of you to respond. But
You'll be fielding all the questions.
Nick.
Hi, all three of you are impressively articulate, and it's really heartening to see politicians of this caliber coming onto the stage now. So thank you all for coming. But I'm struck by this phenomenon that all three of you are sons of very successful politicians yourself. And is this something that that India should be worried about, happy about, or just reconcile to it?
Do you think they should be unsuccessful sons? What we'll do is we'll collect few questions and then we'll ask them to respond to this so that we do have the maximum participation possible in this session. I think your staff doesn't
Mine
want you
is
to
the most
speak.
understated.
I was exceedingly impressed by the presentations. I mean, the future of India looks extraordinarily bright based on the performance of these three states alone.
And Bihar earlier.
I've got well, let me just concentrate on these three for the nonce, but I have a very simple question for each of the panelists. It's the same question. If you could extract one particular recommendation from your state's experience for the other states of India, what would it be?
Good.
And if I can add to that, if you can extract one recommendation for the central government, because what is coming out in the discussions yesterday and today is that great improvements have indeed taken place in many different states, while the center seems to have declined in its governance in the last number of years. Naushad?
So I guess one question for each of the MPs, and one particularly for Piyush. The one for each is, we heard about this plethora of centrally sponsored schemes, and yes, as the compromise was to reduce it to 90 schemes instead of 65 or whatever. If you could, as an individual, if you could pick only one to really push in your state, what do you feel that one scheme would be that would provide the greatest development impact? And the question for Piyush actually picks up on Rakesh's question, which is that whenever I've visited Gujarat over the last many years, I've been struck also by the governance in the state, by the amount of change that one sees everywhere. And when I did a CII role that looked at, that involved Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Goa, I was struck by the huge difference when I met anyone in the Gujarat government. In all the other states, the chief minister was there. If you met a member of parliament, if you met a minister, if you met a department secretary, the chief minister was there. He was important, but he was at best the first amongst equals. In Gujarat, it was very clear that all the department secretaries, all the ministers, all the MPs were accountable to Narendra Modi. They owed their allegiance to him, and it was what the chief minister wanted that they were doing. And this impression was really strong even in the same department, the education department. You could pick your department and you saw the same phenomenon. Sure. And for example, if you go to the Vibrant Gujarat Summit, what you see are very large posters of the chief minister. So there's this somewhat troubling personality issue, a sort of larger-than-life personality issue, which, while I admired the governance, it troubled me as an individual in a democracy.
And as contrast, Mr. Gujral didn't mention his chief minister even once. I won't tell him, but you didn't. Tian?
Both your states have, in different ways, used your resources in a way that, to me, appears to be not conducive to long-run sustainability. In the Punjab case, I have mentioned to you earlier, giving free electricity and encouraging tube well development, which has led to the lowering of the water levels and waterlogging and salinity, etc. That is an issue that you didn't mention, and I was wondering why. Now, in your case, it's the mineral resources. And once
No,
again,
I did mention. I mentioned, and I also mentioned the steps that we are taking.
Yes. Maybe I was not here at that time, but anyway, that's one. In your case, the mineral resources, and to what extent the mineral resources by definition are exhaustible. So to what extent the state is taking steps to use part of the resources that are being depleted, the revenues that are being generated from depleting the resources, to build up alternative investment, alternative the capital that would provide income once the mineral resources are gone. So that's the question for you. Now, for Gujarat, which doesn't have mineral resources, and which doesn't have, Narmada is, apart from Narmada, I don't think there are many rivers to exploit.
Sabarmati is a small one.
Tapti is not very much of a picture. So the resource question doesn't arise. But the question that was asked earlier about the personality cult. Now, I would contrast the personality cult that you mentioned with the personality cult I perceive in my state, that is Tamil Nadu, Jayalalitha. Jayalalitha case, I'm told the entire bureaucracy cannot move for anything without the approval of the chief minister. So from your presentation, I understand Mr. Modi doesn't interfere with anything down below. So the personality cult may have a less of a problem in Gujarat than the personality cult I perceive in Jayalalitha. So each of you are politicians, successful politicians, and I would imagine you have some all India ambitions. And so what would you take in your future campaign for India's prime ministership? What would you take to the other states from your experience?
Same thing.
Marsha?
Mrs. Shebel.
No, Marsha.
Yeah.
Next.
Am I there?
Next. After.
With institutional investors. And
Can you be a little louder?
Yes, I work with institutional investors who are members of Pacific Pension Institute, and a group of them recently were visited by representatives of the central government in an effort to interest their investment in India, particularly in infrastructure, so indirect investments into India, and infrastructure was part of that. And the feedback was that it is very difficult to do business in India. The challenges are high, big, major, and therefore there was a reluctance. And I wondered, to the extent that you might agree with that or not agree with it, if it's on your radar screen, particularly given how important infrastructure is to economic growth and success of your states, to being attractive to foreign investment, and what is being done or not being done. Thank you.
Shebel?
Mr. Goel, your presentation was very interesting, but it seemed that you completely obliterated the history of Gujarat.
I mentioned that, by the way. I never ignored it. I recognize the entrepreneurial spirit of Gujarat.
So let me finish it. I mean, I would like to refer about Jawaharlal Nehru's contention in Discovery of India, where he said that if Britishers had not come, then possibly Surat would have led the industrial revolution in Gujarat almost 200 years ago. Even Pavlov wrote the same thing in the capitalist development in India. He wrote the same, almost same thing of identical nature. Now, if you see Gujarat historically, there were, plethora of institutions which started way back in 1950s, 60s. If you see the contribution of the Sarabhais, They created so many institutions. Institutions are the real trigger for the development of any state. I would like to mention that even Mother Montessori was brought almost at the end of the 19th century, and she created several schools in that part of the country. After independence, from Morarji Desai to several other chief ministers, created benchmark in Gujarat. And I would like to mention one CII report in 1984, where it was reported that out of 100 districts in India, with more than 4,000 crore investment, Gujarat had about 25 districts, and in Bharuch districts only, the investment in Bharuch district was equivalent to the, was more than the total investment in the country. This was way back when Mr. Solanki was there. After, because of many other political reasons, there was a decline in the political administrations and other thing. Last point I would like to mention that even before Modi came, BJP could win elections twice. So it is the 5th election of BJP there. So how could you attribute everything to one person which has some huge historical legacy?
Farhad?
This relates actually to a question which I was asking Piyush at lunch, and also what you alluded to, Rakesh, earlier, that, you know, there are many good practices which are happening in the states. We also know that there are many things which need to happen at the central level too. And what tends to happen in our country, sadly, is that whatever government proposes, opposition opposes. And there are many good things which need to happen, which don't happen because of that. So is there some way that we can have enlightened members of parliament like you, where you can actually initiate some actions to see that certain things can reach consensus, and that we can actually implement things which everyone knows are in the interest of the country?
Lavish?
This is actually a variant of a question asked before.
Just louder, please.
This is just an extension of a question asked before. It's not just Gujarat. I've happened to have traveled in all your states, and also Bihar, and also Tamil Nadu. And in each of these 5, and MP, and Chhattisgarh, wherever you see states doing a bit better than before, there seems to be this amazing degree of centralization of political or administrative power. And it's most reflected by a lack of debate in almost all of these states. You really don't see any debate happening, or for that matter, even within the party or outside, within the administration, like you see at the central level. You don't seem to see that in many of these states. And rather than go into your specific points, what I'd like to just ask you is, in this kind of a scenario, do you think it makes sense to just move to a governor kind of a model at the state level and retain a parliamentary system at the center?
Ajit?
So actually, one question for Mr. Goel, which follows, which is sort of common to this point and Naushad's point. This government has come back for the 3rd time, democratically elected and with a pretty impressive majority. But the style of functioning seems to be the way it's conveyed, as I think Rakesh also mentioned that. In your comments, you kept on saying he's done this, he's done that. So it's almost as if you get elected democratically, but the spirit is not very democratic. And to add to one more example of what Mr. Shehbal said, you know, one of the fantastic success stories from Gujarat is, of course, the Amul cooperative, which you know predates many years ago. So that's the question, that whether there is enough in the system. And to add to what Lavish said, about the state of the freedom of press in the state. I mean, can you throw some within the state, not outside? So that's one question. Question for Mr. Gujral. Two things, it's just minor questions. How is it that Punjab has such a high percentage of Dalits, almost 30%? I'm just curious with what's the historic reason for that?
It's always been so.
And they stayed back when the division took place with Pakistan.
That's right.
So the entire Dalits of the whole Pakistan,
Okay, from the partition time, okay.
Punjab came here.
And the second question to you is about you said that labor relations in Punjab were much better than your neighboring state. So is that because labor legislation is different, or is it because of more flexible labor laws? What is the
No, the labor laws are the same for the entire country, but the culture is different there.
They don't have labor leaders there.
We'll come back to the answers.
Is this on?
Yeah.
So I just have one comment. I think the arc of Punjab through the past 2 decades is a sobering reminder that it takes just a small number of missteps in any particular state for things to go horribly wrong. And then it takes a long time to recover from those things. So right now we're all basking in all these glorious stories and all the success stories, but really it takes a lot of sustained effort to keep it on track, so to speak. My question is really to all three panelists, and this is taking it in a different direction. If the chief minister of your respective states was sitting in the audience and you had the opportunity to give them one constructive criticism of what they've done or not done or how they operate, what would that be?
Good. Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, this is just a brief follow-up to the point that was made earlier about the number of politicians for whom it's a family business. And I suppose this is a question mainly for Mr. Mehtab. So when I went to Orissa a couple of years ago, I asked people what they thought of the government just when I bump into them. And many people mentioned the improvements in the electricity or the fact that the roads were going better or the rupees 2 kg. The one thing I was really surprised to hear from virtually everyone I spoke to was the fact that Mr. Patnaik was a bachelor. And people said that...
Mr. Modi is also a bachelor.
Yeah, so that's where I was headed.
Is a bachelor.
And they said...
And Mr. Badal is a widower.
Yeah, and they said
Mamata Banerjee is a bachelor. So
the fact that there wasn't a family to feed, if you like, through the political system, and lots of relatives who either directly or indirectly had fingers in the pie, was a real positive about the way that the state ran. And given that we have this situation in Gujarat as well, I'm wondering what sort of family policy conclusions we draw from this in politics.
Anjali, you have a question? Microphone.
I felt it was my duty to keep Montek in the conversation, even though he isn't here. So I returned to a point that he made, which was about intrastate inequality. So we've been talking very much about averages for the state and differences across the state, but a lot of the very high growth states still have pockets that have stayed persistently poor. I'm not picking out near the 3 states in question, but Gujarat, which I was asked to visit recently to look at the migrant belt in Kutch. And there in the midst of all the prosperity, you have people living in the mud for 9 months of the year. So there are these pockets which we haven't done much about. And I was wondering what are explanations for why that has been so persistent across the states in terms of this regional inequality, and what are the measures that can be
were they the tribals?
They were tribals, but it was a salt pan district. And so you literally have migrant labor living in the mud for 9 months of the year with villages being completely isolated.
Thank you. Any questions? Mani and NK? Yeah, Mani.
My question is directed at Piyush Goyal. When it was pointed out in a previous slide that in the 1980s, Gujarat went up in manufacturing to 25% of their state GDP, he described my commenting on that as politics.
No, the word. I described your word. You used some word, if anybody recollects. Don't give credit to that. What is that word?
Yeah.
That I commented on, not on the 24%. I give full credit to whoever does whatever. I did not like the tenor of your adjective. I used the word adjective. Mind your adjective.
But you like the tenor of your adjectives about he, and he.
Pronoun.
Presumably with a capital H.
I never criticized anybody else, you see. I spoke positively about what's happening.
You've spoken positively about what is happening.
Without criticizing anybody.
My goodness, your entire speech was denigrating whatever was done before.
Not at all. I recognize the spirit of Gujarat, and I'll further that when I answer your questions.
Any last question?
Yeah, I think this is not a question to any of my fellow parliamentarians, but since Anjani brought up the issue of Montague, who is not present here, but a very important representative of the Planning Commission, Mr. Mihir Shah, is present. And would you like to perhaps carry this message that since there are 5 states, since on Bengal, Mr. Mukherjee has presented the Bengal story, that could the meetings of the National Development Council become as interactive and as useful and as deliberative as this yesterday and today, discussing problems of states and discussing some of the issues of concern? Perhaps it would make for more integrated and more coherent and better planning.
Thank you. Now,
and empower, abolish Planning Commission and empower
National Development Council.
NDC. Good idea.
Yeah, a National Development Council becomes a ceremonial thing in which Chief Minister delivers speeches.
That.
Very good
Chief
idea.
Ministers are given 20 minutes to speak there.
And they have also been given 20 minutes here.
Thereafter, there are no question answers.
But I think there has been, you have been a very good monitor, and it has been interactive in the sense of questions have been asked.
thank you. If I can just ask the panelists now to respond, I have one final thing. One thing, I think none of you talked about clean water provision 24/7 to all. Something that came out in the conference, something most important for any country. Now we talked about sanitation.
I did.
At the margin.
Yes.
No one talked about textiles, particularly no one, Piyush.
Yeah.
Gujarat seems to have forgotten its textiles. And of course, no one talked about empowering local government, either at the rural or the urban level.
I did.
Who will go first?
I can start.
You want to start, Piyush?
So did I, because I said
No, Piyush will start and Piyush will end.
rural development is spent through panchayats.
You start, please.
No, I think let them speak, then I will speak. So that whatever you
Reverse
cover,
order.
I don't have to repeat.
Reverse order, all right.
Reverse order, yeah.
Reverse order. Naresh.
The first thing is that what would we recommend to other states? I think the primary challenge before the country and all the states is how do we make our bureaucrats more accountable, especially at a lower level. That is why there is so much rampant corruption, and the Aam Aadmi, as we call the ordinary citizen, is so angry. And that is why we have enacted this Right to Service Act in Punjab, and we are ensuring that if a bureaucrat delays something, he is actually punished, and there is a monetary punishment. And it is actually working, because we have seen that in the last 1.5 years, the number of applications that we have received and the number of applications that have been cleared by the bureaucrats, this kind of thing never happened before. So I think if we can make our bureaucrats accountable, both at the center and at the state, a lot of our problems would be solved.
Any other comments or responses?
You talked of water. We are acutely aware that Punjab has no business cultivating rice. It's actually water mining. And the way the water table is going down, we are in for a disaster. The problem is that today farming is not a lucrative activity anymore. Montek Singh Ahluwalia said in one of his speeches that 40% of the children of farmers do not want to be farmers in India. Now, why do we provide electricity for the farm sector, which is only 6 hours a day. It's a misconception that free electricity is given 24 hours. It's given for 6 hours. But even that is causing a lot of damage. Now, how do we solve this problem? We have to ensure that the state stops growing rice. But then there has to be alternative crops. And the central government has to come to the state's help by giving minimum support price for other crops, more so cash crops. What we are doing is, since we were landlocked, we have invested, we have ensured that a number of airports are coming up in Punjab so that we can actually export our fruit and vegetable to Central Asia and to other countries. Fortunately, the Wagah border opening up has created a market for our vegetables. So eventually, the farmer will go away. Growing vegetables is far more lucrative as compared to rice, provided he has a market, provided it doesn't rot. So we have to create an infrastructure for that, and that is exactly what our government is trying to do. We have a first-rate road network now. 2 international airports will be ready when one is ready, one will be ready in the next 15, 16 months. 3 domestic airports, so that there is connectivity A, within the country and also for our export. At the same time, we are trying to educate the farmer, and also we have enacted a law that he delays sowing paddy till the monsoons, till the arrival of the monsoons. But yes, it's a time-consuming thing, but we are definitely aware of this problem and we are working towards it.
But TN's point about giving free electricity,
Yes.
I'd like to address.
Okay, I will talk about that also. Why do we give free electricity? Because today the farm size is 2.5, 3 acres. Farming is not lucrative. Input cost is determined by the center. The center decides the price of diesel. The center decides the price of fertilizer. And the sale price is also decided by the center. MSP is decided by the center. So we feel we represent agrarian interest. And we feel that a poor farmer is being shortchanged. And he needs some support from us till such time that the central policies change. Now, on one hand, the center wants us to grow food for the whole country. And on the other hand, it refuses to follow the Swaminathan formula of giving the farmer input cost plus 50%. Now, there has to be some equity. And if the center is not providing that equity, then we feel that it's our duty to come to the aid of the farmer. So that is why we are giving that 6 to 7 hours of free electricity. But there again, as we will become power surplus in the next 2 years, our electricity costs will come down rapidly. So the state will be able to even afford it, but not that that's the way out. The way out should be the farmer should get the correct price for his produce, and that way we don't have to do so. If tomorrow the center raises the MSP, now I'll give you an example. Input costs of fertilizers have gone up by 100 to 200% in the last 2 years. But if you see in the last 9 years of UPA government, the MSP compounded annually has gone up by 9 and 11%, 9 for wheat and 11 for rice. Now that doesn't make sense, because look at the price of diesel, look at the price of all the other inputs. So the poor farmer is squeezed. And I have no hesitation in saying that we represent the interest of the farmer. We are an agrarian party. So we are going to protect him.
Piyush, you're on.
Let him finish, then I have a lot of things.
No, you're in the middle.
No
so
I'm
reverse
happy.
order and you're in the middle.
Absolutely no problem.
One thing maybe you can tell us in the last
There
issue.
was one question on infrastructure. Now again, as far as infrastructure is concerned, the delays are more at the central level. You come to a dynamic state like Gujarat, Odisha, Bihar, Punjab, you will not find those delays. In fact, we are the ones who are keen to push it. And the moment there is a big ticket investment, like in Punjab, we now have a policy, if you invest $20 million only, one IAS officer would be deputed with you to hold your hand and see you through quick clearances, including environmental clearances. So that is a fallacy to say that, yes, there is that infrastructure delays are there, but primarily at the central level and not at the states levels. And I'm sure when all these states get together and form the government at the center next year, at the center also things would be much quicker.
Once the IS officer holds the industrialist hand, he may never leave it. Piyush, one maybe lesson perhaps you can tell us on this charging for, I think you are charging everyone for power now?
Everybody. Nobody gets free power in Gujarat.
And so maybe that's a lesson that...
but they are coming around.
We are coming around.
They are coming around.
So maybe
we work very closely in partnership, all the NDA states, by the way. Okay, the first question, which is obviously, actually a colleague panelist did try to tell me in the beginning, keep a little soft on Modi and focus on Gujarat. But I think it came very naturally. But I'm glad because it has raised a very important point. But I would like to ask all of you, since most of you know the American history, do you remember Obamacare? Why was it Obamacare? Why not American care, citizen care, or anything? John F. Kennedy's
it's the opposition who called it Obamacare, not the proponents of it.
This is also the opposition asking the question. When you talk of New York or September 11th, when you talk of New York and September 11th, what do you remember? Who was the guy standing there with the people? It was Giuliani. Who do you talk of when you talk of New York? It's Bloomberg. You don't talk of every citizen of New York. Obviously, they are the guys who do it, but it's the vision and the leadership which impacts they are doing it. If everybody could run this panel, then we didn't need Rakesh Mohan here. Right? So clearly, Modi believes in that kind of a leadership. I'll give you a live example. Today morning in India, that's yesterday, my son met Mr. Modi. He was to make a 7-minute presentation on his internship. He's gone there to study the relevance of the Gujarat model for Africa. And I talked to him after that. He says he listened to me for 25 minutes without interruption. And at the end, he gave me 3 suggestions, and that's it. That's Modi for you. He will meet everybody. He's a very good listener. In a 1-hour conversation, he talks 5-7 minutes, but he hears you out. He acknowledges and grasps whatever is useful from you, and then sees what relevance it has. And I tell my friends when I set up an appointment with them, if you're kicked out in 10 minutes, you know you're talking an unintelligent conversation. You make an intelligent conversation. I spent 3.5 hours with him about a month and a half ago. We were having a serious discussion on what can be done to improve a certain issue which I'll not discuss here. What I'm trying to say is that man is institutionalizing everything. He's always free. I've seen whenever I go, there's never 20 people waiting outside, nothing. Sticks to a schedule, always has time to listen to you, and then he passes it on to his people. Somebody, I think Naushad mentioned about meetings with foreigners or with other people. It only reflects that he has the time and he's interested in knowing from people from outside, people who understand the thing better. And I'll tell you the first thing he did when he became chief minister. He took his entire bureaucracy, 200 of his top bureaucrats, to IIM Ahmedabad, literally made them stay in the dorms there. And every year they do a refresher course on management. So his concept is get the people, empower the people to implement. And he's always wanting to learn and listen. By the way, I had so many quotes I wanted to give on this, but clearly what works in a system is when the leader sets the agenda. JFK had said, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. That one person has to make that difference. Then everybody else pitches in. I mean, I could give 10 other quotes on that, but I won't go. Steve Jobs. What's Steve Jobs? Apple's a Steve Jobs. What's Microsoft? Bill Gates. We are in Silicon Valley. So let's recognize leadership plays an important role, which is the deficit that the country is facing. In my opinion, the country has no fiscal or current account deficit problem. It's vision and leadership problem, nothing else. We sort out our vision and leadership, all our deficits will disappear. Somebody else had said leadership and learning.
Why do you need a vision? There is one vision. We have poverty and we have to eradicate our poverty.
Okay, then I'll tell you that's the subject I'd gone to discuss. I'm writing a book, how in 10 years we can eliminate poverty in India. And we'll show you how. There's another quote, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. And the last one for money really, the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Anyway, but, but anyway, I think the guy is important because he gives that leadership to the state. And if you talk to people back home, I don't think he interferes in anybody's department. He's available if you have a problem with somebody to sort it out, but he doesn't ever contact you and say, hey, you have this file pending. Once somebody came to him for a tender, he said, look, tenders don't even enter my office. Don't even discuss a tender with me. I don't know what's happening in my state in tendering. About sons of politicians. Incidentally, I'm also a son of a politician, but I suspect nobody would have known that because relatively a very low-key family. But I'll tell you two things that happened in my life.
We are better informed than that.
I have worked 27 years. I came into public life in 9. Money is asking, who is he? So it only reflects how low-key the family was and that I never got that privilege. I've been in public life since 1986, but my mother sometimes jokes, you've been in public life since you were 3 years old. Because I used to stand outside my home with a Jansangh flag and ask people who am I going to vote for. But my mother was an MLA in the state assembly for 15 years. When she finished her term, she didn't finish, by the way, she didn't lose. She said, I'm 65, I need to retire and let some younger guy take the place. But her one condition was I was not allowed to contest that election. When my father finished his term in 2008, I was already right up there handling everything in terms of funding for the party. NK knows that. But I went to my father, I said, now this time you can put in a word. He said, no, not this term, not when I am retiring. After that you can try. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2008. And it's only after that that I got my membership of parliament or even became the national treasurer. So it's not that while my father was there, I got some privileges and just shot up to the top.
Treasury
and I suspect treasurer also after that.
Treasury was there.
No, 2010. I was nominated treasurer in 2010. He passed away in 2008. There may be a few cases, but I tell you, I know most of the young guys who have come into parliament who have background of political families. Believe me, each one of them is well educated by and large. We have the Wharton graduates. I don't know if anybody from Stanford, but we have Harvard graduates. We have people from the best of universities. Jyotiraditya is from Harvard and Stanford. Correct. That's
he was here.
So we have some very good people.
He attended the first conference.
Kennedy family, look at Clinton. I mean, it's not a bar that you're a politician's son. If you're taking privileges, son or daughter. If you're getting right onto the top, overriding everybody else, that could be a problem. But if a person who's capable, who sees politics from birth to whenever he gets into politics, a doctor's son, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, how many of you would tell your son deliberately, hey, don't get into my field? A doctor telling his child, don't ever become a doctor because people will say, because I'm a doctor, you became a doctor. Politicians have to earn their accolades, earn their stripes. I agree with that fully. But a bar on politicians' children, well, I mean, the other viewpoint could be that my father tells me, don't join the BJP, go to some other party, otherwise people will allege you got favoritism. That would be the only other possibility. Centrally sponsored schemes, nobody can deny. I was not there when you discussed, but it has to be drastically cut down. I don't even think 97. Somebody asked a question, what is that one idea? The one central idea. I believe that one central idea that can turn around India is a combo of two things. The fulcrum will be tourism. Around tourism, if we were to plan out the whole India story, and the second leg of that is skill development.
No, they were asking centrally sponsored.
No, he asked me the one idea. Somebody asked me the one
idea to give.
I'm mixing up the two. I want to mix up the centrally sponsored scheme with that one big idea. I think government needs to get out of our lives. I said that earlier. Government need not have so many schemes. What government needs to do is focus on a big idea, scale up the nation in that idea, and create skills. If we were to skill everybody in our country, jobs would come, development would happen. Today, people can't set up industry because they don't get industrial workers in our country. I can't get a housemaid, a driver, a peon, a stenographer in my office. The real issue in India today, that one big idea would be skills, develop skills, and we are sorted out.
On the central scheme, I would just, without any offense meant to your leader, if we were to just make one rule that no centrally sponsored scheme would have a name affixed to it. Because now we have one family name affixed to every central scheme. So every finance minister feels that it is his moral duty to bring 20 more schemes every year with the same name. So it's like brand building at the cost of the state exchequer.
Somebody talked about governance and change seen everywhere. The same troubling personality of Modi, larger than life, individual in focus. I mean, every party does that. The Congress, as he rightly just pointed out, has one family.
I think on that point we've had...
yeah, so that's covered. But broadly, the man believes in empowering his people. He's an iconic figure. So Steve Jobs, I mean, everybody knows Apple with Steve Jobs, same story. Sir, you mentioned, Mr. Sebel, I think, mentioned about no actual resources in that state, which is the beauty of the guy. He had a river, he had the seafront. He had 1,000 kilometers out of 6,000 kilometers of India's coastline. And look at what the state has done. Not to arrogate everything to him, but he empowered them to rapidly expand. So see the expansion in each sphere in the last 10 years. I'm not at all claiming that there was nothing before that. It's not that before him there was nothing and after him there'll be the deluge. Obviously not. But you have to see it in reference. Incidentally, the data Mani referred to, the data about productivity between 80s, 90s and 100s, I've done a little research on that, just for everybody's information. In the 80s, when the manufacturing sector's contribution to NSDP increased so much, agriculture was negative. Obviously, if the other sectors are down and are negative, then whatever growth, even 4-5% growth in manufacturing looks like a hell of a lot, and it becomes a larger share of the pie. What Modi has done is agriculture growing at 7% real terms CAGR for the last 10 years against a national average of 3-3.5%. So we rest contented at 3-3.5%. He's now talking of double digit in agriculture. He's talking of manufacturing growth in double digits, which is not there anywhere else. So the guy is focused on all-round development, which is why obviously manufacturing doesn't grow more, because agriculture also grows and services also grow in his state. He has complete regard and respect for the bureaucracy, Ajit. He really empowers them, and you can talk to any government officer in Gujarat. They don't need to be dishonest, they feel, because they feel empowered by the challenges he throws on them. And which is how he's able to bring that kind of honesty and integrity in government processes. Because the top is clean, then everybody else is encouraged. Yeah, I'm coming to that. Incidentally, the press has been the most uncharitable to Modi. Whether it's Gujarati press or national press. Look at the coverage of the last election. The press was absolutely against Modi. Look at the coverages of every newspaper or the media, the English media at least, and the Hindi media. Now, if Gujarati media is happy about what he's done there, why are you seeing demon and everything? Why do you feel that if somebody praises Modi, oh, he's been bought over or he's influenced by Modi? I mean, there are Ratan Tata praised Modi, Narayanan Murthy recently praised Modi. And if UNICEF says, to your point, that in water and sanitation, Gujarat has done the maximum work, and I refer a website which I just saw when you asked the question. You're free to look at it. It's called WASMO, WASMO. Go to www.wasmo.org and you will see all the rapid work, the studies, and actually go to that site. I'll tell you for what reason. It'll show you how his mind works. He got organizations like Prava to actually study the entire landscape of the state. So they made a grid, segregated different regions of Gujarat, worked out the problem in each region, which is distinct and separate. And from that, they prepared a mission mode plan. And I believe today, every part of Gujarat has water. His next scheme is in $2 a month. He's going to give mineral water, proper, better quality than this bottled water to every home at $2 a month, which will have 20 liters of water, mineral distilled water, given to every home in a jar. 20 liters a day for 30 days costs $2, 100 rupees. That's the target. So he's focused on that subject. Madam, you asked about investors, right? Very serious question. I know there are challenges. It is difficult to do business in India, and we are concerned about the investor sentiment. The central government is taking certain steps. We have a finance minister who's very focused on bringing back the investor sentiment. It is on his radar. They've created a cabinet committee on investments. India, by and large, lives in the states. Gradually, the role of central government is diminishing, save and except for certain areas like environment. I'm quite hopeful we'll sort it out. Also, uncertainty because of the election coming in less than a year. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the whole process. After the election, I would see India making very rapid strides in terms of investment. Suddenly, we have a concern of $140 billion of investments in the pipeline, stuck at various stages of approval. I have certain thoughts on that, but then before he raises the red flag.
I think red flag is there.
One sec. About Jawaharlal Nehru, discovery of India, that's a fantastic example. Yes, Surat was a great city. It could have been the forefront of industrial revolution. But look what a mess they did in the last few years before the BJP came in 94. It was the worst city of India, by the way. When the plague hit Surat, there were more rats in that city than probably the rest of India. The BJP government, and somebody did allude to the BJP's 5 terms. I'm sorry I spoke about Mr. Modi a little more because the reference was of today. And he's the leader there today.
Credit for cleaning up Surat goes to Mr. S.R. Rao.
No, of course, leadership. S.R. Rao also did leadership. He didn't go and clean everything.
Leadership of the municipal commissioner.
Correct, I acknowledge that. But he got empowered by the leadership, political leadership. Why didn't every bureaucrat, why didn't you clean up the whole RBI? There was leadership deficit. Anyway, so I think, yes, Gujarat was a very great state, wonderful history, wonderful legacy. It's what he did to build upon that and make it such a great place to work and live in.
Piyush, I think we'll have
There's so many questions. If everybody asks me so many questions,
I think we'll have some.
Tomorrow I have nothing to say.
No, we are actually 20 minutes over time.
Okay, 1 minute, one point I wanted to say. Yeah, one important question somebody asked, I think Farhad had that question about consensus amongst politicians and different parties. Very good point. I'm glad you asked that. I have personally talked to Pranab when he was finance minister, to Kapil, to the present finance minister. Let me place on record, the NDA or the BJP-led NDA, we stand committed to national good and to do what is good for the nation. There are so many things that have happened which this government could not have done, but for our support. I'll give you an example. The nuclear deal, we've opposed, we lost it, but when it came to civil liability bill to be passed, now that the law of the land allows nuclear engagement, we supported the government to make it happen. My problem with the system is, and why the non-cooperation comes in, a series of corruption scandals tumbling out with no timely action being taken disturbs us. We believe that there has to be some more accountability.
Do you think, just one second.
Yeah.
Do you really believe that you're going to find solutions to these scams?
Yes.
By preventing Parliament from...
I'll explain that also.
I have been here, I have been a colleague of yours for 3 years now. And before that, I was 20 years in Parliament. I have never seen this kind of...
Well, I'll recollect, I'll just juggle your memory. When you made false allegations against George Fernandes as the defense minister and boycotted him for something which was never there. For something which was never there, and for 1 month, the Congress disturbed Parliament, that was okay. But if we disturb for a scam of $30 billion, that's not okay.
You've spoken now for so long, and since you are a follower of Modi, will you please listen to me for 25 minutes and restrict yourself to 3? Now, all I'm saying is that you and your colleagues are leading the destruction of our entire parliamentary system by saying that the conclusions that you come to as a minority in the House have to be the conclusions that we accept before we even begin debating. And this kind of admiration that you have for Mr. Modi and the language in which you speak, it reminds me of Germany in 1930.
Yeah, you said that so often it's become stale.
I think we do have to stop.
By that same token, all these scams that we are talking about are scams which have come out of government institutional reports like the CAG. Whereas you have passed judgment on Mr. Modi for something where the judicial process has exonerated him. But you have decided to pass judgment on him. So that doesn't work in any case.
I think that we do have to. We have to.
I'll be happy to answer
do that bilaterally. Mr. Mahtab.
Anybody else?
You have the last word, Mr. Mahtab. you've been very patient.
That's an understatement.
In the sense, that's why I said all the questions and answers should be restricted to Mr. Piyush Goyal. Yeah.
You see, if I didn't have you as the last speaker, I wouldn't be able to stop him.
Very interesting. Practically, this last session has become very lively. I was thinking that everybody will be.
No more questions. No more questions.
Ms. Shavel, please.
Because I was thinking that we are moving towards evening now. We are dozing. I was expecting that most of them will be dozing. But anyway, I'll be answering 2 to 3 questions which have been, I think, needs to be answered. The first question which was posed by you, what challenges are before us to bring in these big ticket industries? Those have, say, POSCO or ArcelorMittal has already withdrawn. Vedanta is now bogged up with the Supreme Court judgment, and Gram Sabha is going to decide whether Niyamgiri is actually a worshipped place or not. But these things are not actually binding our hands. POSCO is held up because you have to get a clearance for the mining. It's not because of Paradip land acquisition problem, though that is in the media, that is being discussed very elaborately. Actual problem is POSCO has come from South Korea to India to mine the iron ore mines and to get better coal. And the logistics also are in support of it. They had gone to West Bengal. They faced certain problems in Haldia. They thought that in 30 years' time they will be in problem. So they thought that Odisha will be the best place, Paradip will be the best place. Whether they should be given special economic zone status or not, that's the state government has to decide. Whether they are going to give a separate dedicated port facility, that is to be decided by the center and the state. But this type of project is necessary. Necessary not in the sense that it will give us more employment benefit, but there are a number of other peripheral development that will take place, other line industries that will come up. Exactly. And that will also start the whole coastal area, more than 500 kilometers of coastal area also will get rejuvenated. If Dhamra would not have come up, would have been stuck up in Paradip. And Dhamra is today, next to Vizag, is the best deep sea port. And it has large, I don't know whether many of you are aware about it. It has come up as one of the best port in eastern coast, next to Vizag. Vizag has its limitations, you understand that. So in that respect, I would say we have already put in place a very progressive and people-friendly R&R policy. And that is in a way, we didn't have this earlier. We didn't have this 3-4 years back. But taking everybody into confidence, including the opposition political parties into confidence, this R&R policy is one of the best policy, most progressive policy, and much better than the Karnataka policy which was being told earlier. That is the best policy. Odisha R&R policy is the best policy today. And relating to our political party and why repeatedly this government is coming to power, BJD is coming to power. Very rightly it has been said by that Mr. Steve Wilkinson. Yeah. He had been to Odisha. Of course, that's a personal thing which he mentioned. But it has gone to the minds of the people that here is a political party or the leader of the political party who will not tolerate corruption. A shadow of corruption, if it is there on anyone, who is even his schoolmate, his batchmate.
His right-hand man.
Even, whatever. Yes, very, very close to him, or person who is actually mobilizing the political party or the functioning of the party. If there is some shadow of corruption, he is removed. Without batting an eyelid, that fellow is removed immediately. Until and unless something happens, he proves himself clean. That impression has gone that here is a person who who is very intolerant to any type of corruption in administration at that level. That has, in a way, that I feel, it is in a way, has make people believe that here is an administrator or here is a political party which does not tolerate corruption. Regarding what is that program which we should have, and what will be the central policy, central sponsored scheme that we have. As far as I understand my state, I feel watershed development should be more focused. To provide irrigation facility at the local level, at small irrigation potentials, which we are doing it in a great way with the support of the central government. We are putting more stress on that water harvesting structures. And the better thing that needs to be done is education, starting from primary education to higher education. That's why more stress is, as I fully support what has been told by my colleagues here, skill development. Today, number of institutes have come up in Odisha, where we are picking up boys and girls who are just past class 8. They are providing, as we call that, the skill development. They are providing carpentry, plumber, and they get a training. And this is all done not by government support. It is the private organizations or industries who have chipped in. L&T has come in a big way. Tatas have come in a big way. Birlas also are investing in a big way. They take up those institutes and they train people. They're fully financed by them. And they guarantee that after the completion of 2 years of training, we will be recruiting them, we will be taking you to giving you jobs in our level. That's a great thing that is happening. It's a silent revolution in a way which is empowering the youths of our state and also giving them employment to a great extent. But I would say the political aspect is, because three of us sitting here, political aspect is today in India, it's good or bad. Accepted fact is every political party is led by individual or by a family. What is going to happen in future, I cannot say. But if you talk of any political party, it is led by individual or by a family. And but I believe it is parliamentary democracy which will correct itself. It is because somewhere it was mentioned that
except for the CPM.
Even the BJP, Gadkari has no family background. Modi has no
let us
family
not go
background.
into that. You have icons.
Rajnath has no family background. All my presidents. Advani.
You have a president. You have a prime minister in waiting for last 12 years. So let us not go into that. But you have made icons. These are individuals. You go to election putting that individual in view. And so let us not go into that. But I believe, and I think most of Indians believe, it is parliamentary democracy which strengthens the hands of individual citizens. And it is parliamentary democracy which will correct itself. If we think this is not the best way of running our country or running our political parties in this manner, it will correct itself, because parliamentary democracy has that corrective mechanism to correct itself. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Before I hand over to Nick, let me just thank all members of Parliament.
May I just add to skill development what he said? And Mani, maybe you can pursue this. Government of India has been pouring in thousands of crores into ITIs. Now they are outdated. And there is no need to keep on wasting national resource on that. I have been writing to the finance minister from time to time that for God's sake, the only way is to encourage the private sector to step in. And it's a very simple thing. You give them weighted deduction in income tax. If he spends $100 on skill development center, he should be allowed to charge $150 to income tax. you will see they will mushroom overnight, and then all these people who go to these skill development centers would be employable. Now you spend thousands of crores on ITIs, these people come out, they are not employable, then the private sector retrains them. So it's a national resource being wasted.
Thank you. Let me thank all our members of parliament for being here, including those in the audience, Mani and of course NK. I shouldn't have a thank you, he'll be thanking all of us.
He's brought us all
He brought us all here. He can thank us for being here. So, but really it's been an outstanding session, and we really appreciate all your comments. One message we could perhaps send to the finance minister is that when he goes abroad for drumming up investment for India, he should take representatives from the states with him.
India lives in its states, actually.
Well, let me speak for myself, and I suspect for everybody else as well. This has been an extraordinary couple of days. We've never had one in which it was so difficult to end the sessions. There's never been so much engagement, so many comments, questions, insistence on continuing to respond, even in the face of efforts to close things down. And we seem to have solved the problem. Last session has been dead as a doornail so many times, and we've had so many good people talking to an empty room, and I look around here and it's a source of enormous gratification to see so many people here. We thought this was going to be a pretty good session, and it was good in ways that I perhaps hadn't anticipated. There was a bit of boosterism, not a bad thing necessarily, but there was also an extraordinarily instructive demonstration of participatory democracy at work. And this is clearly one of the strengths of India. And let's hope, as was suggested by Mr. Mahtab, that it is this parliamentary democracy that's going to sort things out. I have to thank people. I would like to begin by thanking again the brothers Forbes and the brothers Godridge for their continuing support for the centre. Kanwal manages to get away before I can thank him, but Kanwal Reki, a great supporter. I want to mention Agilent Pung. We assign Agilent support somewhere else, but I mean, nonetheless, we're delighted that you support us with your presence, with your continued interest, and in fact, of course, with finance. And then I have to thank the staff who made this possible. Not just Ben and George from Siepr and their colleagues, but in particular staff of our own centre, Nellie, Geraldine and Sam, and most particularly Anjani, who did do all the organisation for this. Anjani, I think this is your finest work. It's been a superb conference in every way. Thank you very much.